Okay, we good to go then?
Just want to say that it took me like 5 times to get in. I don't know why, but it was difficult. It kept saying the Zoom wasn't something or other, but so other people might be trying.
User error?
Could be. It's Thursday.
Late in the week.
Yeah.
Late in the evening.
Thanks.
All right. Well, we have a couple of intro slides here. So as people join, maybe if someone could watch the participants and let Philip know if anyone else needs to be elevated to panelists, that would be great. So welcome everyone to our Thursday development activities meeting from the Southside Community Council. Next slide, please. The Southside Community Council is a registered community organization recognized by the city of Pittsburgh. As the local RCO for the Southside Flats, the development activities meetings fall under our organization to chair on a monthly basis. This meeting allows developers, business owners, stakeholders, and the community to engage in conversation related to the project that's being presented this evening, or projects. The entire meeting is recorded. And all comments are documented. In terms of next steps, when the presenters head to one of the respective boards for their next step, be it planning, zoning, historic review, or art commission, the Southside Community Council will provide a letter noting any comments from the community in regards to said project. And this letter is also sent to those respective boards I just mentioned, because they will ask you if you have met with the local registered community organization. If you want any more information about the Southside Community Council or the development activities meeting process, please visit our website at southsidecommunitycouncil.org. We have 2 projects this evening on the agenda. 1403, 1405 Sarah Street and 24 South 18th Street. So Phil is going to go over how to participate in the meeting, and then we will turn it over to our first presenter to go ahead and get started.
All right, thanks, Jackie. Good evening, everyone. I'm Philip Wu with the City of Pittsburgh Department of City Planning. And as Jackie mentioned, I'll just be going over a few pointers related to participating in the Zoom meeting. First, if anyone has any technical issues or needs any assistance, I'll be here. So feel free to use the chat to ping me or raise your hand. For any questions for the presenters, you can use either the Q&A tool or the chat feature to type out your question or comments. You can also raise your hand, tap the raise hand button to ask your question out loud. Or if you're calling in by phone, press *9 to raise your hand. And for our presenters tonight, we ask that you be mindful of anyone who may be on their phones or who might not be in front of their computers, and to try your best to describe what's on each of your slides. And as Jackie mentioned, we are recording this meeting for the Southside Community Council to post online or to share with anyone who wasn't able to attend tonight. And with that, I think we're ready to get started. And we'll let the applicants share screen here.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Thank you again for having us, and especially really on such short notice. Just to recap, as you know, last month we were attending the dam meeting. We took into consideration everybody's concerns. I know that a lot of times in these meetings, you know, the presenters or the people who are proposing the project will take the concerns and they'll go tell the community to go and pound salt. But, you know, for us, we really wanted to be good neighbors. We, after we heard the concerns, we spent, several hours and thousands of dollars discussing how we could revise the plan to better suit the community and to address their concerns. We've completely revised our plans of what we were originally proposing, and now we're going to present them to you tonight. So I'll turn it over to Art, the architect, who will take it from here.
Hello. We listened, and a couple issues that were very prevalent were the fact that we were building, we were going to be one of the first people to be building a modern looking building. And another issue was that we were going to have a roof deck. So we had somebody from the office go through the south side, and he spent a short time photographing some of the other modern buildings that exist and have existed for quite some time, some of them on the south side. The first two pictures show two of those buildings, but they also show both of them have roof decks. The one on the right is 3 or 4 units, and it has a roof deck over all of them. The one on the left has a roof deck.
I can't see anything.
One part.
Yeah,
We're
I'm
not
not
seeing
seeing.
anything.
Can you advance to your next slide, please? You're still on your cover sheet that says front studio, 1403, 1405 Sarah Street.
That's interesting.
I think it says your screen sharing is paused. So that's maybe done by the host.
I see your screen. But just as everyone else has said, I only see the
Maybe.
front studio logo.
Here it says resume share. Let's see if that doesn't. Should we exit out and try it again?
Yeah, I guess we can.
Yeah.
Okay, looks like your buildings are showing up.
Great. Great.
Okay. Let's go to the next one. These are buildings that are modern looking, and they both have the one on the left had one roof deck because it was a one family building, and the other had roof decks on it. Now we were looking at on the next, can we go back to the last one? These are some modern buildings in or on the south side, and the one that's second from the left is the home of an architect named Gerard Damiani, who I used to teach with at Carnegie Mellon, and who did the building to the right of his house and put a big addition onto it not too long ago. And these are all very modern buildings. The one at the bottom with the curved wall was very clever, that the existing building had that curved wall, and he just covered it with siding and then built his sculptural building on top of it. These are the plans for our project. This is 1403, and they're spacious and they're narrow, and both buildings have 2 cars. Next. And here's 1405, which is basically the same plans. And on the ground floor, you can see the 2 cars again. Now, this draws two drawings. The one on the left is what we presented to you last time with a 0 setback here and a 0 setback there and a strip down the center that was to be planted. And there was so much contention about not having the correct setback on the right side that we moved the buildings together, and we now have a 5-foot setback on the right side, which is what is required by the planning code. We still have the same contextual code in the front, which is next to another building that we did several years ago. And the one on the left is a 3-foot setback, which matches the 3-foot setback to the left of our building. So the total between the buildings will now be 6 feet. And the back setback is 2 feet, which matches an existing building there. So next. These are all plans of the units, and this drawing shows the setbacks on all of the units. It's the speckly red drawing on the on the screen. This is a view of the existing broken up sidewalk and the existing house, which will be torn down. And there's the existing building next to this site, which we were the architects for. That's the existing backyard, back buildings behind us. Again, another one. This is a view of our next door neighbors. This is the building. The one on the right is the building that we designed a few years ago and is occupied. Then there's an empty lot, which is occupied by, I think, a construction trailer. And then the one on the left of that is an existing building, which has a 3rd floor roof deck looking out at our building. And here's a view going all the way down to the back of our site. And this is a drawing of the new proposal where we've put the two units, the two buildings together and taken away the center strip so that we can get the 5-foot strip on the right and the 3-foot strip on the left. And this is a view from the street, which shows the exact same kind of parking as the building next to us. And it's 5 feet away from that building, and this building is 3 feet away from the next building. And they have, as you can see, they have recreation areas at the top. We've tried to listen to what you had to say, and we did a lot of work trying to find a way that we could come together with some of the people that commented about our project the first time around.
Right, and I think what's important to note is that this building now is within the contextual setbacks, whereas before, we were needing variances. Here, it does not appear that we're going to need a variance just because we are within the contextual setbacks. In fact, this particular building allows more space in the back than the previous buildings that were currently on these lots.
Thanks, Art. Thanks, Drew, for the presentation. We really appreciate the time that you spent to listen to everyone's comments last month and then react to it and modify the design as we're seeing today. I know last month we had just one or two comments about the actual aesthetics of the structure itself, but most of the conversation was around, and sorry, I've like a lot of pages of notes from last month, was around the use variance, the parking space requirements, and the setback variances. And so can you just address those one more time, and then I'll have our folks in the crowd raise their hands and ask any more questions there.
I would like everybody to identify themselves with their name, please, also.
Sure, this is Jackie Kaiser. I'm on the Southside Community Council. I just asked those three questions.
Okay, the setbacks, the front is contextual because it matches the building next door. The right-hand side of the building, as we're looking at it, it's 5 feet, which is the zoning ordinance requirement. The one on the side is 3 feet, which is contextual because the house next to us has 3 feet also. And the one in the back is closer, but it matches an existing side backyard. So we do not need a variance for any of the front, back, or two sides. As far, what was the next question?
Okay, but your ZBA request does note that you are requesting a variance for some of these things.
Sure, we actually haven't had a chance to amend the ZBA application yet. And I kind of took the more cautious approach to just leave it in there. And if it becomes a moot point, when we go before the board, they can just disregard those requests.
The rear, sorry, I just want to ask if anybody has the clarity on this. The rear setback, I don't know if it can be contextual like that. I know the front and the sides can be, but is anybody more aware of the zoning code, how that's worded, just for clarity for this conversation? Again, Mike Clark, Southside Community Council.
I don't know off the top of my head, but I'll look it up.
Okay, I honestly I've never heard that being allowed, because the back is in this zone is normally 15 feet, I believe, is the standard setback. And
But none of the houses behind us has 15 feet behind them.
Oh, I don't doubt that's the case. I'm just saying the use of contextual setback for the eliminating the rear, I haven't seen done. Normally we just it's a variance still, I guess is what I'm saying. When you say contextual, you're basically asking for a desk approval from the zoning administrator, right? Where it's of right.
Yeah, that's exactly how we were sort of interpreting that.
Right. I haven't seen that done. Anybody else? For the rear, again, seen it for the front, seen it for the side based on what's next to it and contextual, but never seen it for the back. So
That doesn't mean it's not possible.
and I'm not saying it isn't, Art. I'm just saying maybe you should leave that on your application And again, I think that's what we're here to talk about. I don't see a reason why you can't. I just wanted to ask the question. Okay.
Sure. And then I think your other two questions were with regard to the garage and then the use variance being 1405, taking that from a single family to a two family is what we wanted to do. With regard to the garage itself, and Art can maybe correct me if I'm wrong, I think what we're really talking about is it's, I think, like 1 foot shorter than it needs to be.
No, it's not a matter of needing, it's a matter of what the zoning ordinance calls for. And the fact is, it's 18 feet. And cars are a lot smaller than they used to be. I drive a Mini and it's 12 feet 4 inches long and 5 feet 4 inches wide.
Just so you know, the folks in the house next door park Cadillac Escalades there.
Yeah.
So we can't bank on the fact that everyone owns a tiny car, unfortunately. That would be
No,
fantastic.
but any car that's made fits in 18 feet, unless it's a limousine. I don't think that's really a major issue. I don't even know why anybody cares about that. I mean, we have 3 cars parked in the parking spaces in our drawing, and there's plenty of room for them, and they're not even hugging the front wall. So
No, it's not that, Art. It's the fact that the people in the adjacent building, your prior development, park poorly and park large vehicles, and they leave them hanging out over the sidewalk. So people actually have to walk by and step onto Sarah sometimes to get by the cars improperly parked. Right? If it was a garage door, they would never fit in a lot of these times. They have other things in front of it, around it. They're just bad drivers. So we're seeing the potential here of more of that, which eliminates the pedestrian friendly nature of Sarah Street, which is a main thoroughfare. So that's what we're trying to address, not the fact that the cars won't fit, that it's how it's going to be utilized. Right?
well, I mean, the owner of these buildings could insist that their tenants do that. And I'm surprised that Claire Notkin hasn't done that with her building. But we can't control that. Our client can't control that. And there's not a car that I know of, except a limousine, that won't fit in 18 feet. And the reason it's so important to us is we've lost square footage because we've taken 3 feet off of one side and 5 feet off the other. And we picked some of that up because of the courtyard we eliminated, which was 5 something wide. And it just seems
Understood, but you also have to understand in Mike's comment that while you might lose square footage, someone in a wheelchair may have to go out onto Sarah Street because someone can't park there because they don't know how to park, they're poorly parked, etc. So we obviously have some comments related to the fact that the parking isn't deep enough. We do have some hands raised in the crowd, so if we can, I think we have Mike McKay with his hand raised. We can go to him.
Okay, Mike McKay here, Community Council. You had mentioned earlier that there's a recreation area on top. What exactly is that?
a terrace, I guess. It's a place for people to get outside.
Is that on the rooftop? Is that what you're saying?
No, it's a 3-story building. It's above the 2nd floor.
Recreation area on top. And that picture that we're looking at there, is that where the vines are hanging over?
Yeah, that's right. We'll go back. Can you come back to?
Okay. All right, where those people are, that's the recreation area.
That's correct.
Okay, all right.
And it has a planting area along the common wall and along the front and along the side of both terraces. So nobody can get too close to the edge. And there will be plants that will screen some people, and there'll be vines that fall over the edge.
Okay, while you have that picture up there on that brick portion of the building up on the roof, it looks like it's recessed. Is there something going on up there on the top?
I'm sorry, I don't understand what your question.
Right in that area there. What is going on there? It looks like it's a recess of some sort.
Oh,
the
no,
roof.
that was left over. That was a line that was left over. And that doesn't exist. There's just one roof.
Okay. All right.
Doesn't the city have responsibility for making sure that people work properly?
Don't know.
Anybody else?
Can you, I don't think we covered the use variance. Are you
Oh,
still
I'm
going?
sorry. Yeah. And then
to
in
that
terms,
use
in regard to the use variance, so I said before, for 1405, Sarah, we would like to take it from a single family home to a 2-family home. And so, with regard to variances, essentially, what you have is you have a use variance and a dimensional variance. Okay, so with dimensional variances, that's very quantitative. It's basically essentially like I have a square hole, and I need to fit a round peg in it, and I need you to make your hole round so that my peg fits. It's easy, you can comprehend it. For a use variance, that's qualitative, and what the courts have said is that if the variance is the minimum variance criterion, if it meets the minimum variance criterion, then it should be permissible. And what the courts have done is they take a look at what do the other buildings surrounding the subject property look like. And so I've done this. I've taken a look at Sarah Street, and almost all of the or not Sarah Street, but in this particular block of Sarah Street, the 14th block, if you take a look, for example, if you stood in the middle of Sarah Street and just spun around in a circle, what you would see is mostly 2- and 3-family homes. We are literally 1405 Sarah Street is literally a single family island in a sea of 2-family and 3-family variance uses. So for example, 1403 Sarah is 2-family, 1401 Sarah is 3-family, 110 South 15th Street, which is our neighbor, is 2-family, 73rd South 14th Street is 2-family, and there's only one other single family on the block, which is 112 South 15th Street. So that is why, that would be essentially our hardship as to why we would need this this use variance.
You said you're going to promote that as a hardship for your use variance?
Right, yes.
Okay, we have 2 other hands raised that I can see. I see Mike Clark.
Yeah, hi. So I just wanted to ask a couple of questions. The Sarah Street facade there, is that a garage door or is that windows?
Those are windows.
Okay. Thank you. Can we talk about the slot conditions on the sides and on the back? How will they be treated by your development? The back one especially, it seems like it's so small that you're not even going to be able to get in there to maintain it. How does it become not a nuisance for the neighbors adjacent to it and for your own tenants?
Have you seen what's behind our building?
No. Do you have pictures?
Well, you
Show.
go look at it. It's a nuisance the way it is. And our client owns several projects, and they're very keen on their maintenance. And we're going to plant a hedge across the back of this, which will take up the feet. And they're meticulous about how they handle their projects.
But it's only 2 feet wide, isn't it?
Yeah, that's enough to plant hedges.
Okay. Seems like they'd be too small to be able to both plant and maintain to get in there. 2 feet I could barely fit in. But okay. And then on the sides, you have planting showing here on this. Is that the same thing?
That's 3 feet. And
Right.
that's a contextual setback because the one next door is 3 feet.
Correct. But will that be also planted? Or
Yes,
is
it
it more
will. It's
hardscape?
even shown that way.
Yeah. Okay. So that begs my question, is that gated then from the street? Or how are we, I know you're going to be taking a fence down here in the foreground as part of the project. Are you replacing that fence and then returning it to your building facade to control access so people
Yeah.
can't go back there nefariously?
That's correct.
Okay. Is there any type of variance required for that since it's a fence on the property line?
No,
Are you requesting that as part of the development?
no,
Should you be?
I don't see any reason for it.
You're only allowed a 4-foot fence on the front of the property. If you need something higher, it's a variance.
We don't need a fence.
Didn't you just say you're putting in a fence to replace it?
No, we're not. When I was talking about a fence, I was talking about another view. There's a fence between our property and the Notkin property next door to us that's got the same kind of parking.
Oh, I'm talking about the foreground of this image here. Isn't there a side fence there now? Defining their 3-foot walkway?
I honestly don't remember that.
There, you had a number of photos in the beginning of your deck. Maybe you might want to scroll back there and take a look of the surrounding properties and see.
There's a fence I think the fence you're talking about. Excuse me. And that's the fence between our building and the Notkin building next door. And that's their fence. And if they want to keep it, they can keep it. It's on their property.
Okay, but on the foreground, the building here on the left, they have a 3-foot slot there. Are you gonna be putting in a fence there for them as a neighbor?
Not
Or,
unless they want it.
okay, well, I guess what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to secure your property and the neighboring property from people walking back there nefariously. This happens a lot in our neighborhood with drunks walking around, especially in this area here. So I guess I'm looking for some guidance on how you might want to be working with the neighbors to secure off the zones between your houses as part of your development, since you're working right up to the property line on both sides. And you have sort of these.
Well, we can put a fence up on the end of it like their fence is. If that's something that's desirable, but
So this building in the foreground, is this building's getting demolished, correct?
correct.
So Mike, this building in the foreground, the yellow brick.
Oh, what's on the other side of this one then?
Yeah, what's on the other side? If you were staring at this building, facing it, what's on the left side? That's
Right,
his
we apologize. I just have the Google Street View up now, and I see it appears that there is some sort of a black chain link fence between this building 1403 Sarah, and then the building immediately to the west of it. So I believe that might be what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, so what I'm saying is there's most likely that's going to be torn down as part of your construction. That's, to not destroy that fence, and that's fine. You probably want a new fence just for aesthetics of your own. I guess I'm suggesting that maybe you guys have plans to put in a new fence to replace that for that neighbor, put in a new gate at the front of theirs, but also put in a new gate on your plan just beyond or in front of your doors on the side as well to control access to your 3-foot area. And I'm wondering if that was in the plans. I didn't see that in the plans.
Well, I'm not a lover of fences, but if that's what's desired, we'll do that.
I guess I'm just asking, throwing it out there. As a neighbor, I would prefer that there be some access control so that there is not a place for drunks to go and people to go. So I guess consider that. Where is the the AC, what kind of mechanical units are they and where are they located?
On the roof.
Yeah, no outdoor units on grade or wall
No.
mounted or in the rear?
They're all on the roof,
Okay.
all 4 of them.
Are they on the second floor roof rear? On the
No,
top?
they're on the top of the stairways, which is 3 stories.
Are they visually,
They're screened by walls all around them.
they will be? Okay,
They will.
all right. What about your electrical and gas meters at grade? Some of these projects are. they
There
don't
will be
handle
no
that situ-
gas. No gas. This is an environmentally responsible development. And the electric meters will be screened and tucked into Gerard Damiani's house that I showed you earlier. The front part of on the left-hand side of the door has a swinging lattice work that has the electric meter in it. And that's the kind of thing we're going to do in both buildings.
Where was that in could you change your slides to show me? I didn't see that in your design. Maybe.
We want to see Gerard's house.
No, on your design. I know Gerard's my neighbor and good friend actually as well. So
Oh, well, good. We share that.
yes, I'm very familiar with his contraptions.
Well, if we had the view of his house up to the left side of his front door, there's about a 2-foot area that has lattice work on it.
Yeah.
And it's a door that opens up so they can read the meters, and it's right there. Which is what we're going to be doing on the left.
On the side past the doors or in front of the cars?
Past the doors.
Okay, so on the side wall past the entrance. Okay, all right, that's great. And where is the trash and recycling being stored?
That's an interesting question. I think it will be in the mechanical areas of all 4 units, and then it will be collected for the times when they'll be picked up and taken away.
So are you saying they will not have standing garbage cans anywhere in the car park area or
No.
site?
Absolutely not.
Just bags out from the units as needed. Nothing will be
That's right.
stored outside. That's really crucial for a lot of neighbors. That's a concern in the neighborhood. So,
No, I can understand that.
because if it wasn't, then we would ask that you create a corral somewhere for it that's unsightly and out of the way. So if that's the answer, then we will hold you to it.
I don't mind that.
Okay. That's the the green roof on the rear. I can tell you from Gerard's roof, who him and I've worked with a lot, to keep that thing alive and well is difficult. It's not as planted and forget it. He's up there like a crazy, crazy person, trimming it, tending to it, fertilizing it. It doesn't just plant it and grow. What kind of green roof are you planting here? Is this more of an intensive or extensive? And how are we going to keep it so it's not an overgrown mess that the neighbors have to look at? Yes, or a dead thing.
I honestly do not know that. We haven't addressed that, but we're trying to make this building environmentally responsible, even though the Supreme Court doesn't want to deal with the fact that climate is changing.
Yeah.
As architects, we feel a responsibility to take that into consideration. And a green roof is one of the things that we can do. And we'll find a way to keep that grass wet enough.
And I think because it's rental property, that is a concern. If it's a homeowner who has requested that of an architect and is living in the house, it's easier to maintain because there's a commitment there. But when you have rental property, more than likely, it's not going to be maintained. And
I don't agree with that.
well, we live here on
I think
South Side.
the-
We live
the
here on
own-
South Side, and there's quite a few rental properties here. And we can share with you what happens with rental properties where they're not well maintained, and
Sure.
there are quite a few.
But I think it's important to note, and correct me if I'm wrong, Art, these actually are not going to be rental properties. The expectation is to essentially turn them into condominiums, is my understanding.
Eventually, yes.
But again, eventually, they're going to be rental, and that's, I'm glad that you brought that up, Drew. When they're completed, are they going to be rental properties? And you have tenants in them. When are they being considered for condos, for condominiums?
We can't answer that because our client should answer that.
I mean, my
I don't know
plan
the
is to make
answer.
them condos from the start.
So they're
Pardon?
going to be they're going to be put on the market to sell as condominiums.
Eventually, sometime.
Eventually, yeah, we'd like, I plan to keep them, but I'd like to retain the option.
Which means they're rentals. That's, I think, where we're confused here. You want the,
I mean, we can all tell you that if you go around the south side and you look at the houses that are well kept and the ones that are the worst offenders that are not, it's the difference between rental and ownership. So I'm a big proponent of green roofs and gardens and street trees that you have here. But if we can't get the owners to acknowledge and to do some maintenance work on them, it just becomes a visual blight for us. You know, we have ragweed growing out of the roof and we don't
I
want.
understand. So is your preference that we just go with a straight black roof? Is that better?
No, my preference, if you do not want to do the green roof, then go to a white roof. That would be my preference.
Okay.
But I would prefer that you do try to achieve the green roof. I just wanted to make you aware that it does take a fair amount of effort to upkeep and maintain. And to Art's comments about Gerard's, it's been, I think it's 20 years. I actually helped him put that roof on. It's been about 20 years now, and he still spends about 2 days a year, up there, an all day thing, maintaining that roof, trimming it, seeding it, planting it, not to mention watering it once in a while too. So it's not a plant it and forget it thing. It's like every other garden or tree, it needs maintenance. So
I know that, and to address that,
Yeah.
the building code requires if you have a green roof that you put a rail around it so that people that are up there taking care of it don't fall off. So
you can have a tie-off, Art. That's acceptable as well. That's easier.
well, but it's not as environmental. And in
Well-
spite of what the Supreme Court says, the climate change is a reality. The temperature in London yesterday, I think it was 104 degrees. The planet is warming, and anything that we can do to help mitigate that is positive. And the green roof does that.
So I just wanted to ask one more question, which is about the street trees here. Are these yours as part of the project, or are they just put in for graphics?
No, we were going to plant them or
Okay.
have the city plant them.
Well,
But
I think
the
we might have
city
taken
only
them out
plants-
in the current project.
The city only plants twigs. We'll plant trees.
Well, the tree that was planted in front of the neighboring property to the right was a twig and it got broken off, I think, didn't it? So yeah, if you could make this one a little more robust, or these both, that would be amazing. I'm a big proponent of street trees. That was my last question, so thank you.
Okay, Matt Brungo, you haven't had a chance to speak and I see your hands raised, and then we'll get back to you, Mike McKay.
Hi, guys. Thanks for coming back. I just wanted to start by saying I appreciate the work you've done to incorporate a lot of the comments from last time. I do think this looks better significantly.
Thank you very much.
You know, just and I don't need a lot of discussion. I just want to bring these up. I don't know. The one thing I still see unresolved, and Mike Clark is going to have a better answer, a more in-depth answer than I do. But if you're proposing 4 units like this, I do think that the IFC is going to require sprinklering. I don't know if you had a plan, and I don't need a lot of discussion. I just think that's something I see when I just look at it. And Mike brought up the street trees. I think the city has designated sizes for the concrete cutouts, the pits that the trees go in. And based on your continuous curb cut, I don't know that you'll have the linear frontage to comply with what they want. But you know, I don't know that that's either here or there. I just wanted to say thank you, and I'm sure we'll have commentary afterwards, and the community will be able to discuss it. So thanks for coming back.
Thank you.
Yeah, since I guess I was in, he mentioned my name. Yeah, the street tree requires 30 square feet for the pit. However you achieve it, they ask for 3 by 10 is the base amount, but if you can come up with it with any other geometric equivalent, that works as well. So I'm not sure where your curb cut and edge of property is, but you might require some of the neighbors' curb or sidewalk to be part of it. And we do that often here because we have a lot of in-ground utilities that don't allow the tree to solely sit on one person's property. You know, a foot or 2 of it might sit across property line, which as long as the neighbors are in agreement, they allow that to happen. So I'll let you figure that out with your survey and neighbors. And yeah, I think he might be right. Don't know the sprinkler code. I know that anything 3 units or more requires it, but you are building it as 2 separate lots, or are they amalgamated into one lot, or are you and building it as one project, or are you keeping it as 2 separate projects built as duplexes on 2 different lots?
Right, I believe that that is the plan, is essentially have the 2 separate parcels sharing a common wall with each building essentially housing 2 families.
Okay.
So 4 total.
So if that's the case, wait, 4 total, 2 separate buildings, 2 separate lots. If that's the case, then you won't be able to achieve the aesthetics you have here to this level. You will have to bring the firewall through the roof, and you're going to have all these firewall conditions that aren't present in the design right now, which you can mitigate. But that's the difference between when you sprinkler it, build it as 4, and when you build it as 2 2s, you have to worry about the aesthetic and the completion of the firewall between them. So again, if that changes the design, I think we'd be interested to know, but sometimes it does, but it might not.
Mike McKay, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, just a quick question and a comment. Over on that left side of that picture there, you have a 3 by 5 green space. Like this is part of the building. What is that for? Does that serve any purpose? I'm just curious.
No, that was that was our way of keeping people from walking to the back.
There's a 3 by 5 offset inside into the building?
No, our building is 3 feet away from the property line. That's the 3 feet that we're planting.
No, I'm not talking. If you go to one of your plan views, you'll see a little green spot that's 3 by 5.
Oh, that's our light well that allows light into both bedrooms.
Bedrooms and a bathroom, okay. All
Yes.
right. And that's the only reason for it, just to let light in?
Well, it's also when somebody's inside, there'll be things growing in there, and it'll be attractive to look at.
Oh, okay. All right. And then a comment about rubbish. I can't honestly believe that if I live there and I have bags of garbage sitting in my kitchen and I have nowhere to put them, is that even sound reasonable? You have nowhere to put your garbage? We have people that live here now that have garbage cans and they still put their garbage out on the sidewalk. So what would happen to people here who don't even have cans? And you're saying, you know, they'll leave the garbage in their house.
No, we have storage rooms in all 4 of these units, and
Oh, okay.
and you know, I think they'll all have compactors, and so the garbage will be crushed and deodorized
Okay.
and then placed in the bag.
Okay. All right. That's it. Thanks.
Well, I guess, you mentioned that there's a mechanical room that people would store their garbage bags in. Where is that on the plan on the first level?
It's
Under the steps.
no, it's not under the steps. I'm looking for it here.
I see in the basement storage.
It's on the left most plan, and then there are, I don't know where they are on the that's 1403. I don't know where they are in 1405. I honestly forget. But it's somewhere, because there's somewhere that all that equipment has to be, and so there's room in that.
Well, we are looking at 1405 now on the screen, and if you look at the left-hand side where it says ground floor, there's a space for furnace, hot water heater, and to the left of that, it does say storage.
Yes.
So people are
That's under
gonna
the
keep their,
steps.
so people are gonna take their trash down a level next to the bedroom and store their trash there and then bring it up for trash day. Okay.
No, that's on the ground. Is that,
That's the basement.
That's
It's-
on the ground
it's-
floor. They have to
it's-
take it up a half a flight of stairs.
It's ground floor is subterranean on this plan.
yep,
That's correct.
thank you.
Yes, first floor, second floor, and then terrace. So the ground, so you're telling us renters will take their garbage down the steps to store inside their house and then bring it back up.
That's the way it is now, yes.
Well, I wouldn't want to live there.
So I think that is something that
Yeah.
Tiffany will have to think about if they are rented. And even as homeowners, it's, as we mentioned, storage is challenging for all of us who live on South Side, especially if it's not maintained in the way that it should be. So it's something that it really will need to be reviewed as to where it needs to be. And then when tenants come in, reinforce with them the importance of storing it the way it's supposed to be stored. Because we will contact you if there's problems, and we just would prefer not having to do that.
I understand.
And you meant trash, not storage as a problem. You meant trash as a problem.
Trash, yeah.
And recycling.
Yes, recycling.
Well,
looking at this-
maybe,
I'm sorry,
Go
just
ahead.
one more thing. I just noticed the basement. I didn't get that before. I thought I had it mixed up, but so the basement unit, is that a door and egress, air light well, so that people can get up and out of it? There's a
Yes.
stair in it. Okay. I just want to understand that. And then it will have, so I guess that's another a security issue again. I'm thinking how that is controlled so people don't nefariously get in there to get into the unit. Is there some type of security on that, or the fence?
Yeah, there will be.
Okay. Okay. All right, thank you. Go ahead, Phil.
Yeah, so I was gonna, ask, about the garbage. How is it handled in the unit next door that's owned by the same owner? That might be kind of a, because that building is architecturally similar, right? So
They're almost identical.
I think it's a different owner on the building next door, correct?
Oh, you're talking about not our building, but the Notkin building.
110.
Yeah, I don't know how they do that. We can check if you'd like.
I would say more often than not, since I do walk looking at trash issues here on the south side, it's rare for them to have be in violation of the trash regulations. So they are storing their trash appropriately. So it would be a good thing to ask.
I also want to note that I put in the chat the regulation for contextual rear setbacks. So what was the rear setback for this plan here?
2 feet. The existing building at 0 feet.
Is that 1401?
No, we're dealing with 1403 and 1405.
Right, but contextual setbacks, they would require the contextual part of it be buildings that still exist.
There's a building that's right on the property line in the back. And then the other building is just a few feet. Much of their terrace is on this property. So I can't tell you exactly where their property ends, because they poured this slab that's a good bit on our property.
I think the confusion there, in my opinion, is that the house behind it is actually, it's their side yard, not
Right.
their backyard. So that's what I was, I guess, inferring that
Yeah.
it's a little confusing there, how you'd view that as contextual when it's not their backyard, it's their side yard. So, but I understand what you're saying.
The contextual rear setback, it has to be contextual to other homes that are facing the same direction.
Well, the homes that are facing us are in very great disrepair. And in those houses, a good bit of their concrete terrace is on Tiffany's property.
Right, but I'm looking at Google Earth, and only 1401 will be remaining after, once yours is demolished. That will be the context that Philip's referring to, I believe. That one has a rear yard setback of about 10 to 12 feet along, is that 15th Street then? No, yeah.
And why is that important?
14th Street.
Why is
Because-
that important?
Because you would need a variance otherwise if you weren't
Okay,
able to
so
meet
We'll
that
ask for
requirement.
that. But, I don't know why people aren't looking at the fact that these apartments are going to be very positive for the community. We're taking down we took down an incredibly nasty building, and the one that's still left is not exactly a jewel. So I think just by building these, we're improving the neighborhood.
And we don't disagree with you, Art. We just want to make sure that, we're doing it the right way. And
No, I don't disagree with that, because that's exactly what we want.
Yeah.
Is to
So
do
all
it
this
the
is
right
I
way.
think you have to amend your application to include a rear yard variance, a rear yard setback variance, which I don't see anybody here saying they disagree with. We want to make sure that this is one of our challenges with the dams. I feel the people that come to them don't always have all the appropriate variances outlined because at the desk, they didn't help them, or the applicant didn't know at the time of application, and the desk people didn't know or acknowledge these minute differences or the situations of the site. So we're just trying to make sure that we have it, as Jackie said, our ducks in line here, and we're asking for the right thing. So there is no, this is better for you, and then it's addressed. So, but yes, I think, Philip, you're correct. And if you guys want to do that, just keep the rear setback variance, that would be fine.
Okay.
Well, if
opposition to it.
getting back to a comment that was made earlier about the house on the corner behind us, that's really their side yard, then they have no backyard. And they butted up, they still do butt up, I believe, next to the house that's directly behind us, which is a mess.
All right, we're just talking about the regulations that are in the city code and what's required. We're not, I don't think anyone is putting a value judgment on, whether the variance is something that they would support or not support. It's just, I think folks are just trying to help make sure that you're complying with the code so that there are no issues there.
Sure. We understand that, and we'll keep the rear variance in then on the application.
Right.
And thank you for pointing that out to us.
And we'll have our surveyor go back and specifically look at all the adjacent properties in the back.
Yeah, 1401. While we were having that conversation, I was on Google Earth and I did look at 14, what is that, 7 or 10, the corner building, your previous project. They do have their garbage on the side of the building, open canned. It's kind of a mess, to be honest with you, on Google Earth.
I'll have to go back and look at that.
If I could share my screen for a second, I could show it you what I can't start while the other participant is sharing.
We'll stop sharing our screen so you can share yours.
Okay, here we go. Just show you what I mean. And screen 1. Share. Tell me when you can see it.
Yes. Yep.
And then there it is right there.
Okay, I haven't seen it in the back.
Yeah.
I haven't looked that far. I think Dan's building always took my eye.
Exactly. No, it was a piece of junk and we're glad it's gone. But, we just don't want more of that down the side, both sides of your building as well. So if that could be addressed, we would greatly appreciate it.
Well, we've addressed the condensers. They're not on the side yards.
Yeah, no, that's
They're
great.
on the roof.
They should be. Okay, great. Thank you.
It may be something that you want to, and not that you're necessarily responsible for the property next door, but you may want to share that with Claire, since you have been in touch with her and you received a letter of support from her. I did want to mention that the letter as it is written, I think, is somewhat deceptive in that in reading it, I read it and assumed that the person lived next door and what was an actual neighbor. And that's not the case. She owns the property, and there are tenants who live there. And so she said,
Doesn't mean they're second-class citizens.
Not saying that but what I'm saying is that when I initially read the letter, because we had the meeting the last time, and the neighbors who did live around there were asking lots of questions, I knowing that was not an owner-occupied building, it just, someone reading it can make an assumption, because it is so vague, that the person does live next door and that they're excited to have these new neighbors. So, certainly it doesn't need to be rewritten. We may add that to, our comments when we go to the zoning board to discuss this particular property. But it would be nice if she indicated that, she owns the property, but she doesn't live here. And I think that, it would be helpful. It's open and transparent. And certainly the people who live there are not second-class citizens, certainly, but at times when you're a property owner, it's very different than when you are when you do rent the property.
But you're just as much a stakeholder as everybody else on this call.
You're right, and that's what she should indicate, that she is the, she indicated below that she's the owner of the property. In the letter, she should indicate that she owns the property and that she doesn't live there, or that she has tenants living there, that it's a rental property. I agree with you that she has a stake, and again,
It's much.
but I think to be transparent, it would be nice.
Yes.
I think deceptive is strong.
Yep. I hear you.
Okay, we have Matt Brungos. Do you have another question, or is your hand still raised from your last question?
I put it up, Jackie, and I don't, I think my primary comment may have already been addressed. It's just, Art, when we point out variances, we're not saying that anyone disagrees with what you have proposed. We're simply noting what we have to review at these meetings and what should be asked. And I don't want to go down the rabbit hole, but I look at your rooftop decks, which we see throughout the neighborhood and are appropriate, and no one has a major problem with. But I don't have a level of specificity in your drawings to be able to tell the deck is an accessory structure. It is subject to side yard and front setbacks differently than the primary structure that is the house. I know that there are planter boxes there to keep people back from the edges, both across the middle and on the front. And it very well may take care of any issue with arms hanging over, things being dropped from the deck, the neighbors being antagonistic towards each other with a shared 4-foot separator that they can easily see over, speak over, touch each other over, things like that. But the issue is that a variance that should have been requested? If it wasn't requested, is it being caught by the ZBA? And is it being discussed? Is there an appropriate variance being asked for? And I think there's a lot of these issues, like with the rear setback. The question is not, would we support the building as presented? It's just, does there have to be a variance requested in order to build what you're proposing? So I just don't, it's not always so adversarial as much as we're trying to make sure that the correct variance package is presented here and to zoning, and that the correct variances are being requested when development takes place.
So that our letter of support can reflect that. That's the basis of it, right?
That'd be fine.
Jackie, there's a question from a member of the audience, Faye.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my question is the
What
drawing.
is your name first?
Okay.
My name is Faye Strickland.
Okay, thank you.
It appears from the drawing that there's 2 living room kitchens in the plan, one on the first floor and one on the second floor. Am I correct in that?
They're both two-unit buildings.
No, it has ground floor, first floor, second floor, third floor. If you go
Yes.
back to your drawing.
But the one unit is the ground floor and the first floor, and the next one is the second floor and the roof.
I misunderstood. I thought they were side by side. Okay,
They are.
thank you.
They are very much, but the units and the units are the same in both buildings, or not completely identical, but almost identical. And this this drawing shows how they will look vertically, even though they're not put together.
All right, I misunderstood. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Each address has 2 units.
That's correct.
Okay. That's all.
And we'll check into the comment about how close the terrace can be to the property line. We have a great attorney sitting next to me,
Thank you.
and I'm sure that's a job that he'll take seriously,
That is for sure.
because he's a resident of South Side. So we all know where to get him.
Okay, do we have any other comments or questions from the group on this presentation? No?
Well, we've
No,
tried very
once.
hard to be thoughtful neighbors.
Understood. No other questions going once, going twice? No? Okay.
I have a quick one.
Oh, no.
Okay. Okay, Mike.
I'm looking at the drawing here and, you know, I was a draftsman and for 50 years, so I know how to read drawings. And when this says ground floor, it's actually the basement. And should the drawings not indicate that it's below grade, which is the basement?
No, they don't have to say that. It's in the ground. It's a ground floor.
In the ground, then maybe it should say in ground floor. That's what's misleading. You read that and you think you come off the street on the ground and you walk in, but that's not the case, because you got to go down X number of stairs to get to that floor, which is.
Oh, well, that's the
great.
recreation room, the main unit. The living room, dining room, kitchen, and the bedroom are on the first floor. And downstairs is another extra room. The main entrance and all of the necessities of that are on the first floor, which is the one you enter.
I understand all that. I'm just saying that the drawing should indicate that that is below grade. That's all I'm saying. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions on 1403, 1405, Sarah? No?
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
I
thank
appreciate
you.
all your comments.
Yes, thank you. I just want to ask our team from the city of Pittsburgh real quick. They have a August 11th date for zoning, and it sounds like you may be amending your current
No, we're not. We're going to
request?
stick to that.
Or no?
We're sticking to that.
I'll have to look and see, if we need any additional variances. I think that we requested one for the rear, so I don't think we even have to change that. And I don't believe we're going to need a variance, as I'm understanding it, for the rooftop deck. So that might be the only one that would change. And potentially the parking. I can't remember if we requested a variance for that or not, so.
You
Okay.
did.
So,
Are you referring to the depth of the parking?
Right.
Okay.
yeah, because I'm looking at your submitted proposal. There's only one floor plan in there of what you're calling first floor, and then a perspective. So I'm not sure what zoning will require when you go. So maybe Thomas and Phil, knowing that this is essentially a 4-story building, I'm only seeing one level submitted to zoning.
The ground floor basement is not considered a level. This is a 3-story level
Okay,
district, and that's what we have. We have 3 stories and a ground basement.
Yeah.
okay. So,
But to her point, I believe, Jackie, you're right, that they might not have seen as part of the package, the roof patio to assess it whether or not, which I believe Matt is right. We've dealt with this before, that it's considered an accessory occupancy and will require its own variances or offsets or setbacks. So. sorry.
Right, so I'm just asking, like, there's not a complete package submitted, it seems. And I'm curious about that. And if they need to make any changes, is there like a drop dead date for them before August 11th? Do we know that? So I want to make sure that we can get our letter both to the developer here and back to zoning in time. So that's why I'm sort of backing out from that August 11th date.
Well, yeah, Thomas and I can, touch base with our colleagues in the zoning division, and
Okay.
ZBA dates, they're, they can always be moved if necessary.
Okay, great.
And or just just a comment. I think you're right, but I think it's actually a 2-story building with a mezzanine structure occupying that 3rd floor space. Because as you know, that wouldn't count. You could have a full 3rd floor there with a mezzanine above, and that could be above the height max for the neighborhood. So just keep that in mind. As long as that's not more than 1/3 of the floor below it, it would not be a 3rd floor. It would actually be a mezzanine.
That's interesting. I know that's true, but I never thought of it using that part of the code for this. I'll check that. Right now it's approximately 1/3. If you don't, it's less than 1/3 if you don't count the stair that has to go up to the roof.
Tomato, tomato. It seems like either way it wouldn't change the way we address it.
I think that's correct.
Okay. Thanks again.
All
Thank
right.
you very much.
Thank you
It
very
was,
much for joining.
This was I hate to say it before the end is rung, but this was a very much more positive meeting than we had the first time. Thank you very much. Everybody was polite. I hope we were.
Yes, of course. Thank you so much for coming back. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, cool. Thanks. Okay, so we now have our second agenda item of the evening, 24 South 18th Street. And I believe we have everyone on the phone from that team. Have they all been promoted to presenters? Alice, it looks like you are. You just came off mute.
I just have share screen. Let me see.
Yeah, does anyone else on your team need to be promoted for presenter?
I can, yes, I would say Alicia would be.
Yeah, Alicia has been promoted, and we
Fine.
also have Franjo Construction here.
Great. Okay, I'll turn it over to your team and you can go ahead and get started.
Okay, thank you. Let me grab this here. Okay. I'm sorry, I have 2 screens. Let me move this over so I'm looking straight ahead. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Well, first, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Alice Washington, and I am from the TSSP Housing, and we are going to be housing the students of the Stepping Stone Pathways.
Alice, excuse me, we're seeing it looks like your
Second screen.
your desktop screen. Before we saw that, we did see your presentation. Yep, we're seeing it. Thank you.
Oh, you can see it when it's on the screen then?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'm just gonna have to turn this way because it's on the others. Okay. Is that better?
we can see the presentation.
Okay. All right.
At least I can see it. I hope everyone else.
Everybody else see it?
Yes, we can
I
see
see it.
it.
You can see
Yep,
it.
thank
We
you.
see the presentation, but we don't see you anymore, Alice.
Oh, wait a minute, what happened? Oh, I had to move the computer monitor over so that I'm not looking sideways while I'm sharing my screen. Because
And
when I
that's
brought it
fine.
over,
That's fine.
you guys couldn't see it that well. Okay. Well, first, thank you for putting me on your agenda. And I'm happy to be here, and I'd like to share our presentation with you. The overview of the program is from my own personal experience. I understand everybody had a copy and had a chance to read it. And because of my own personal experience and having to go through some different trials and tribulations and being a college student, there was a program here years ago called the Dorothy Day Apartment, which this is going to be similar to, but offer more services to the resident. And what we want to do is pay it forward, because a lot of times college students who are single parents have challenges that others don't. And I want to define a single parent because some people have a perception of it. A single parent can be someone who is a widow, who is separated from marriage, who is divorced. And we also take a person whose spouse is who is serving for our country, because they are at the time a single parent because their spouse is away serving. So they are also included in this. And we like to make sure that we give them that same support as well. So when we speak to single parents, that's what we're looking at. And in order to get into our program, our students have to have a 90% attendance in school. Their lowest grade point average could only be a 2.5 once a semester, because everybody has that one subject, no matter how hard you try, no matter what assistance you get, you just have that struggle. And I respect that because I've had mine and my children have had theirs, and the rest of those subjects they excel at. So we do take into consideration that. And then we also have a program that we are connected to that really focuses on those students who have any type of academic challenge to keep up with their schoolwork, where they get tutoring one-on-one on a regular basis, weekly, for an hour. So we make sure that they have a strong support team, which looks like a mentor, a life coach, an academic success coach, a health coach, and a mental health coach. So we make sure that the only way that they fail is if they don't show up. And when they don't show up, they are no longer part of the program. So in order to get into the program, they have to apply, they have to have references, they have to write a letter of where they are, where they want to be, and why they want to be a part of our program. It is a bit strenuous compared to others, but we're going by how we started and what that looked like. We're looking for students who are committed to focus on their future and not be in school for 5 years and not even have an associate's degree. So the qualifications, and the student must pay 10% of their net income on top of that. So the quality of student that we work with in our program would be that same student who would be able to qualify only by HUD standards. If they qualify through them and qualify through us, then they get in. So it's not just whoever is thinking about going to school. So that student would not be a part of our program. to go to our next screen is our team. Right now, TSSP Housing Phase 1 LLC is the developer. Bridging the Gap Development is our development consultant. Our construction is by Franjo Construction. Our architect is by Piper O'Brien, her architect. And we will have property management. And we are in talks and have been and are continuing to move forward with the realty management here. So it will be a constant thing, and they are interested in working with us. We just need to solidify some things at this point. But at this moment, we do not own the property. We should be closing within the next week or so. And once that happens, then we would be able to talk further about those things in our next meeting with you. Plans for the property here is we're going to leave our current tenants, the Yellow Submarine, on the 3rd floor. Most of the work being done, which is going to be about 95 to 97%, is inside of the building. So there won't be much noise. There won't be, any concern as far as that is concerned. The 2nd floor will be converted into 5 2-bedroom apartments with 1 bath. And the 1st floor will be converted into 4 2-bedroom apartments with 1 bath. And both floors will have 1 handicap wheelchair accessible unit. And there is an elevator that goes from the basement to the 3rd floor for the wheelchair to get to the 2nd floor. At this time, we will not include the lower level. This will come later at a later phase of development. Just wanted to share some pictures of the space here and the address, 24 South 18th Street, and at different angles. An upward view of it, where it is on a location map. The zoning that's already been used in this space. And it is a RIV RM for residential mixed use. And it was advertised as transition opportunity for mixed family for their brochures as well. Here is the property description as far as looking above and seeing where it is at. Technically, it is here in the blue square, rectangle. Flood map information here, since it's so close to the river and where we are actually located. And then the description of the building, the square footage, 15,444 square feet. We have the construction details at this moment. And does anyone have any questions about this thus far with the?
I know I will, but let's wait until you get all the way through, I think, and then we'll go to questions if that's all right.
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you.
And here is our first blueprint from our owner that they shared with us. And the second and third floor look exactly alike. And then here it speaks to the ADA compliance of the building. And this is what the building looks like right now per floor. This is your first, second, third over here in your basement. This is just an idea of the concept we would like the apartments to look like. And to mention, we will have security inside and out in each unit, with laundry inside each unit, and the services from the stepping stone pathways. It'll be, again, 2-bedroom, open concept, and your bath. Okay, I'm going to give this to Alicia to speak to.
Yeah, if you don't mind, go ahead and I'm working with 2 screens as well. So if you don't mind, go ahead and continue presenting and I'll just tell you to move on to the next slide. How's that? If that's okay.
The last thing I have is our time frame tentatively. We're looking at 4 months for our license, permit, and processing, 8 to 9 months for rehab, approximately 9 to 10 months for move-in. And I want to say the rest are your blueprint.
All right, very good. Okay, sounds good. You can go ahead and go to that first slide there, Alice. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for taking the opportunity to hear us out today, all the community members, panelists, and board members. Again, as Alice mentioned, we're very appreciative of the opportunity for you to listen in. So as all of you are probably very familiar with this area, very walkable. And I think what attests to sort of Alice's mission in providing opportunities for these special conditions for, you know, these individuals, we have an opportunity for not only public transit, which I will touch on. I know parking is a major issue, especially in the South Side, no matter what zoning district you may live in. But in terms of having that walkability factor, is that we couldn't have picked a better location, with not only Giant Eagle being right down the street and off of 20th Street, but also 5 blocks up, there's a bus station. And also, and then to the west, closest to the Giant Eagle, there's also another bus station. So public transportation is a very, very big opportunity here in this region, which is also aids to the mission, you know, for these widows and, you know, these with these underprivileged, you know, this opportunity. So moving forward, Alice sort of touched on the fact that, you know, this is pretty much accessible in terms of ADA compliance, with the first floor being able to be accessed right off of Merriman Court, which is, you know, along the longer edge of the building, which she showed one of the original slides with some of the pictures. But also the opportunity too is that this building offers a lot of natural light, which also abides to, you know, having that open, fresh concept that, you know, we're getting in a very older building, you know, and I think this is a very wonderful opportunity to offer transition from old to new, you know, and this building has a lot of character to it, and we're not planning on doing much to the exterior. You know, we're going to we have the opportunity to daylight, especially in the basement, for whatever future use that may be. And some of the previous, before, you know, us coming into the project, we have a lot of opportunity to maybe add or punch out some of the existing openings to maybe add a little bit more daylight. So that's also at the forefront as well. You know, with a mixture of 2-bedroom, junior 2 bedrooms, the majority of them, and then a true 2-bedroom. If you want to go ahead to the next slide, Alice. All right. You can kind of see our concept. And as she touched before, you know, we want to also drive home the opportunity of providing equal opportunity housing for, you know, also the ADA accessibility requirements that are currently in place today. So having an opportunity for each unit type, their own accessible entrance, fixtures, you know, being accessible and flexible, especially with the 2-bedroom. The 2-bedroom can either be a den, or it could also be, you know, another bedroom. So the junior bedrooms, to put it into definition of how we're treating it, especially for this design, is the junior bedroom, one bedroom would get a window and the other one would be more of an interior. So for a case of a single mother, that could potentially be, a nursery, or, it could be a playroom. I think what our plan is trying to offer is flexibility, in everybody's situations, and having the opportunity to kind of continue on and moving forward, especially, with this budding neighborhood, with the riverfront district, and with all the opportunity that's around them as well. And with being a little over 5,000 square feet per floor, I think we've maximized, especially in some of the efficiency numbers, we've tried to maximize and bring enough square footage to the building to make it not only, comfortable for the tenants, but also, for money, when it comes to renting out these units, it's more desirable as well. So with the mixture of the two, with 9 total units, I will get into the parking portion because I'm sure you guys are very interested in that. The 9, since we are budgeting for 9 total units per the zoning code, that means 9 spots. And then if the business was to remain, we would be looking at a total that would actually be less than the requirement of what the previous use, which was all office space, which is being grandfathered in. So the only change of use would only be for the residential portion. So with that being said, we've actually increased the parking requirement. And with the zoning district being a riverfront residential mixed use, we can also account for the 50% decrease per the zoning code. So with that being said, we are going to be due diligent with our process, and probably in looking into the parking, just because of how Southside is, but stepping into the idea of being able to have a transient oriented flexibility. I think that that's something that we are very mindful as well.
So I just wanted to clarify. So what is your parking stance on? Are you seeking to rent elsewhere, arrange an arrangement for the parking?
So I think we will probably end up having to work with the zoning board or the zoning code officials to see what was allotted previously, because like I said, the business was actually, it was occupied as a business, so the parking demand was a lot more. So what we were going to do is kind of work backwards, because we already know that the parking demand is going to be less. So if we have to seek a variance, we'd be more than happy to. But at this stage of the game, we're so early into this process that we would have to have an understanding of what's allotted and kind of go from there, because something must have been in place beforehand and we just haven't gotten that far in our research and reaching out and determining that number. I can give you our rough estimate as to what our totals would be, if that would be helpful.
Sure. I mean, we'll take.
Okay, give me 1 second here. So with 9 total units, and I'm gonna have let me scroll down my screen here. Okay, so for the total number of units, we would be 19 spots, which would include 1 handicap. That would be the total. That would include the nine total units, plus the office occupancy, which is grandfathered, which requires 10 spots. And then, so that gives you a total of 19 total spots. So then you start taking your reductions, which is in the RIV RM district, it's 50%. So that takes us down to 10 spaces required which includes 1 required handicap spot. So then the other option would also be to maybe include maybe in a reduction in bicycle parking. Bicycle parking can also account for 1 parking space. So it's a 1-for-1 swap up to 30%. So that's also something that we can look into as well. So altogether, if we were to take both reductions, we would be required 3 bike spots and then 7 parking spots, which includes 1 required handicap space in that total.
Okay, thank you.
Of
And
course.
I think Philip and Thomas, I don't know, because we haven't dealt with the RIV a lot, but I'm not sure that you can take the biking reduction and the RIV 50% on combined. It's one or the other. Was my
And Mike,
understanding.
I'm sorry, Mike, this is Matt Brungo. I advise the Southside Community Council. I'm an attorney. I agree with Mike that we haven't dealt with the RIV a lot, and I'm only jumping in because I'm going to have to step away from the call here in a moment. But I do have concerns about the parking and the way that you're calculating your need, and I'd have to look at the RIV. I think this looks like a pretty good plan for the base zoning district there, but the parking will be concerning. I don't know that you only need 1 spot with all these units being two bedroom. I'd have to look at the way that is presented. The other issue I think you're going to run into is you get the 30% reduction, not in a 1-for-1 basis, but if you provide a certain number of bike spots in a separately lockable space for the tenants, and you need more than just 1-for-1, it's a certain percentage. Like I think it's 1 bike per unit in a separately locked interior storage area inside the building, because we have dealt with some larger projects that took advantage of the bicycle reduction. So I would just say that I think it sounds like a really good project, but I would be concerned about trying to take too much parking away from it, because there will need to be some type of parking solution addressed.
I understand your concern, and I did take that verbatim from the zoning code. So if there's maybe a footnote or something that I may be missing, I completely I could go back and take a look at that. But that was word for word verbatim from the zoning code. But to my other point, to go back to touch on it, is that because this was a grandfathered use, we already know that we're going to have to maybe have a discussion with the ZBA about the potential business, because according to the current zoning code, business is not permitted in RIV-RM. So if there is some discussion that's going to need to be had because of the changing of changing of the landlord and everything like that. But to my point, the original calculation of the parking was for just office. So you're talking that we're just doing that once. The 1 floor of office was only requiring 10 spots. Multiply that by all floors. So that's 30 spots. So that's the point that I was trying to kind of relay, is that we are being very conscientious of the parking demand, and we'll go for a variance required, but based off of the initial preliminary calculations of the square footage and everything like that, we are well reduced from the original load of an office occupancy.
Okay, no problem. We'll continue the presentation and then we'll come back. Thank you.
Okay. Alicia, would you like me to hit the next screen, please?
Yes, yeah, go right ahead.
Sorry.
Okay. All right. Yep. And then this is the other remaining floor, just showing the junior bedrooms and just and deciphering, the different differentiation between the units. So that's pretty much in terms of the floor plan. I can touch on if there's any other questions regarding the floor plan. I'd be more than happy to answer that as well.
This says 3rd floor, but this is actually the 2nd floor, right?
Yeah,
Right.
So yes, that's,
Okay, all right, thank you.
I'm sorry. And there's one more slide. Would you like me to start that one, Alicia?
yeah, go right ahead.
Okay.
Okay. Yep. And this is currently the first floor. And understanding that there might be some reworking of the stairs. I know that we might have to rework it in order to accommodate the runs, but without being able to go in yet, there's just some interior fit out, minor alterations that would be taking place, nothing that would affect the exterior of the building in terms of something that might prompt any kind of site plan zoning review other than, the parking question.
And
Alright.
Marty from Franjo is on to answer any of your other questions.
Okay, I think that's the last slide in your deck, correct, Alicia
Yes.
and Alice?
Yes.
Okay, we have a couple hands raised in the audience. Frank, I see your hand is raised if you want to come off mute and ask your question.
Thanks. Alice, this sounds like a really cool project, but can you tell us more about your organization? How long have you been in existence? How do you get funded? Do you have a board of directors? Are you just going to be dealing with college students? Or are you going to be having high school students? Is the place going to be, is it going to be staffed? Can you just give us some details about all of that?
Sure. We've been in existence for 4 years. There will be no high school students. Everyone will be 18 and older, and they must be enrolled already in college. And what was your next question? I'm sorry.
How are you funded? Where are you getting your funding?
We bootstrapped for 4 years, and right now we have some funders that are interested in helping us with our funding for our student services.
Are you going to have any staff on hand in the building?
No, there will be no staff inside of the building. The building will just occupy the apartment and the commercial building. I mean, the commercial office on the 3rd floor. That's what the property management will take care of.
So does your organization have a board of directors? Is it just you? Are there any paid employees?
At this time, there's no paid employees, and we do have a board.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Alice, do you have any other locations that you currently operate this program out of?
No, this will be the first housing piece.
Okay.
This will be our first housing location.
Okay. All right. I think next in the queue with their hand raised was Mike Clark.
Hi, and I'll wait. Oh yeah, I'm unmuted. I'd like to also say it sounds like a terrific organization. So I'm excited that you guys found us, and hopefully we're a good fit for one another. As a community, I guess with our nighttime economy, I don't know, you're right down closer to the area that is a little busier at night. I'm not sure. Have you guys considered that, thought of that? Have you guys been around in the evenings to look at the community? If we're promoting a studious location for studying students, I don't know, I guess.
Okay, I'm gonna be very honest. No, I'm not from the South Side. I'm from the suburbs. So the nightlife, that's not ever really been my thing. So I'm not familiar. But I do understand that there are some concerns, and we have those concerns as well to keep our families safe. So there will be security and security cameras on our building on the outside and in the inside, and it will be secure getting into the building as well. because we want to keep our families safe, just like all the residents there.
I'm actually less worried about the safety factor because we all live here and we all know that there's areas and times that, you can be, you have to be a little more careful around the neighborhood, of course. But I was actually just thinking of more of a distraction. If you're trying to create a comfortable place in a walking community, which we are, that is distraction free, that's not what we are at that location. If you you might have some of your guests, tenants seeking, if they're trying to study or something, it's going to be a louder Friday and Saturday night with the crowds that come down to seek entertainment late at night. So that's all I wanted to, I guess, mention there. Let's talk about the building now. So we talked about the parking, the bike rooms. So I'm asking, is there going to be a bike room? Is that going to end up in the basement then, Alicia or Alice?
Well, so the bicycle parking is an additional reduction that we were possibly pursuing. Again, it's something that probably needs to be clarified. I understand that, back to, again, I don't want to keep driving the point home, but I know that based off of the previous occupancy, it was a lot higher. So I think my initial thought was if a lot of the requirements nowadays, especially with permitting, is that if you do provide, you got to provide a parking, if you provide a common shareable parking space, bicycle parking space laid out per the zoning, requirements, you can do a 1-for-1 up to 30%, which I think that came through in the chat to clarify that. So, that's an additional reduction that we can look at, in the future once we kind of understand what was allotted previously. And then, if that option is available to us again, we can maybe pursue a bike room. But at this time, if it has to, I don't think Alice wants to take up any room in any of the floor space, to accommodate as such. That would be more of like a public bike sharing, which is also achievable, 5 blocks up, I believe. I think one of Highmark's bike sharing is 5 blocks up, closer to East Carson.
Oh, I don't think public bike share counts towards your parking reduction.
Okay.
Not here, at least.
I don't think so either. I've never.
Yeah, it would be bike parking specifically for the use.
Building. Secured in the building, within the footprint of the building or on the property. And since there's no property, it'd have to be inside.
Okay.
Well, so that's why I'm looking at your basement. It's wide open. That would be my assumption, that you'd probably be utilizing the basement for that.
Right. And we just haven't gotten to the basement yet. So if we need to, we do have that opportunity, for the reduction. Okay. I just know that, we can address that in the future. I just know that that's available to us.
Okay. Well, the next thing is garbage and recycling. So you're too large for residential pickup, so you're going to have commercial pickup. Where are you going to keep your dumpster or containers then? I assume in the basement as well. We brought up with the elevator and put out for commercial pickup.
I would say we will have to see what they're doing now and what they've been doing.
Little different requirement for business versus residential, but yeah, it'll have to be inside or on the property. And since you're 0 lot line, it will have to be inside the building.
And maybe we work in, there's a possibility, Alice, that we work in a trash room, or a trash chute, or something like that. And you can maybe have a staff person, take the trash out on pickup days. I think that's something we can pursue too, with the opportunity of having, the lowest level available to us. We can maybe add some of these, we'll call them building amenities per se, and address some of those needs as well.
Absolutely.
Okay. Is the building sprinklered now?
Yes, it is, from top to bottom, even in the basement.
So it would be adjusted to fit top to bottom, right? So it'll be NFPA 13 compliant. Okay, good. Thank you. Which kind of HVAC or heating and cooling system will you be proposing for these units?
So we probably end up having to use VTEC, or what we're calling Mitsubishi machines. And so that's going to be something that'll be inside the units themselves. So each unit will have their own unit, and then any unit that will require will duct to the exterior for probably through the roof.
Okay, I think because of your size, you're going to be required to provide corridor fresh air to the units as well, because you're multi-unit. So you have to look into that, but you might still need a fresh air unit for the building.
Right. No, understood. And that's probably something that we'll end up having to put on the roof. I think that is one of the, because of, like you said, at the 0 lot line, we'll probably consider on the roof those units probably are going to be very minor. So I believe it's a flat roof with a parapet. So I don't think any additional screening is probably going to be needed. So
Well, yeah, that was my next comment, because some of them, I know a lot of the Mitsubishi type units are lower set that you see residentially based, but there are larger ones that Franjo might propose, like City Mutuals, that are 6-8 feet tall and they sit on a curb, and they're meant to supply 10 units at a time, sort of thing. So that's going to be really important to the people and the residents around us, because we don't want to see that sticking above an already taller building on the block. So can you, I guess, facilitate that with Franjo, that they are, selected for size and to be hidden, or more, maybe even put more into the center of the roof as well, so they reduce their visibility from elsewhere?
Right. Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Mike, is that all you had, Mike, or do you have additional?
No, I had a couple more. Sorry.
Okay.
I wanted to make sure you made sound accommodations in the building. We often run into the units when they're not properly renovated, that they don't have good sound attenuation between floors. So it becomes an issue where buildings are just sort of less desirable because of that. So please keep that in mind. The future plans for the third and basement. So if it is your building, say the business moves out, or the basement, you have more funding, would you actually put more units then, you're saying, or proposing in the basement without any windows? I'm wondering what the viability of that might be. I'm just trying to gauge, the full build out of your plan here, your master plan of the building, and say 10 years, when you have all the money that you can get, what does it look like, and how does that change what we're looking at? Is the plan just to duplicate the floor plan up one more and possibly down one more, or is there other things that you're considering for the building, a business use or something else? Maybe that's an Alice more than an Alicia question.
Well, I can touch on the windows, actually. I don't know if Alice might be able to flip back to one of the photos along 18th Street, but there are opportunities to do window well punch throughs that will be able to have daylight down into the basement. So we will have that opportunity as well.
Okay. They'll have to have, accessibility to them, of course, to be living or sleeping units, but which changes that.
Right. As of right now, I think Alice can probably touch on it a little bit more, but I think right now we're gonna leave that alone, just because we have a clear indication of, our 9 units and the business on the 3rd floor.
Okay. Are the windows being replaced as part of the project?
This is Marty Donahue with Franjo. No, most of the only windows we're going to be doing, all the windows are in pretty good shape. There are some, I think 3 to 5 that the seal was broken. So all we would be doing is replacing those panes.
So I don't believe any of them are operable though, Marty.
I believe they all are. Because when we went through the one time we got to go walk through, they all look to be mostly double hung. There are some that are just storefront, but I'm trying to think. Most of them are double hung windows.
I'm looking at the Merriman side, and every one of them is the storefront, not double hung. I see 2 double hungs. That's it. That's why I was wondering, you know, as a sleeping unit or a unit without an operable window, that's very undesirable, I think.
Well, off the front is the corridors. So most of the
That's
I
true.
believe the double hungs and all that were off to the back. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Looking to the riverside.
Okay.
But
well,
the
that makes
front, yeah, they're all storefront, but that's just going to be for your corridors, which you don't want anybody to open them anyways.
Okay. It's a good point. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And of course, you'll have to meet energy code. I know I've been in that building.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of exposed bricks. So yeah, lots of stuff going on there.
Everything gets furred out. Yeah, everything will be furred out and going to your other previous, it'd be sound mat underneath the LVTs, you know, flooring.
Yep. Sounds good. Just a couple of things about the mission. So if they utilize your services and they graduate, as soon as they graduate, are they out, Alice? Are they given a period of time to transition? How does that business model work for you guys?
In their last year of school, we work with them in becoming homeowners. We are partnered with another program so that once they leave, they are working in their career field. They have a mentor in their career field. They are ready and financially sound to move. If they choose to purchase, they can. If some may not want to, and they will be financially sound with our other program that we are partnered with to help the students with their financing, savings, and credit. So in their last year, when they move out, they will be ready to go, and we will give them like 3 months, but we will help them plan ahead to find if they're going to be purchasing or if they're just going to go into another rental, but they will be fully prepared to do either or. It'll be their option.
Okay, great, thanks. And then my last two comments was the property maintenance, I guess. We will, I guess, make sure or ask that you guys do have somebody who will be doing the snow clearing and the maintenance for winter on behalf of the residents of the block. They're going to do their fair share. We appreciate and hope that you would also do yours. And that includes any maintenance of planting and weeding and trash pickup as well. So we're hoping that's taken in consideration when you're talking with it and hiring your property manager.
Absolutely. The property will be managed all year round, inside and out.
Great. And then I believe the parking, just so you guys know, because of the size of the building, you guys are not eligible to qualify for the residential permit parking. So you will have to solve for the parking. And I'm imagining you're going to say that not a lot of your prospective clients or tenants will have cars. It might be more of a public transit oriented resident, which is fine. And that's why we live in such a nice neighborhood that's walkable. But it is a concern that we are adding a fair amount of, I guess, more people living in an area that has less parking than ever before. So it is tight down there. That's all I wanted to say. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so Mike, so we have a couple things in the chat. I know Kevin Morrison's question was answered, but I'm just going to read it out loud. For the panel, if a change of use is granted, does it survive a change of ownership? In other words, laudable through it is if Alice's project fails and ownership of the building changes, can a new owner put 9 short-term rental units on the market? And we have a response in the chat. It would depend on the certificate of occupancy and designated use for the project. If the new owner wants to do something different that doesn't meet the use description of the occupancy permit, then they will be able to apply for a different use. So I don't know if that answers the question, but I guess we want to know, is there a change in use variance that we're going to see here in this project? Does that apply to this?
Well, it would be a mix. It's gonna be a mixed use because originally it was an occupancy of business. So now it'd be multifamily for the residential.
So it is a change in use then?
Mhm.
Okay, and then to answer Kevin's question, Phil, was that your response in there?
Yeah, and I meant to say, in that last part, they will have to apply for different use, not they will be able to. So, yeah, sorry, go
Philip,
ahead.
will it not read, should it not read non-conforming business use to remain on third floor multi unit housing, lower 2 floors and basement, or something like that?
Yeah, the business, I guess in this case is considered a non-conforming use because it was established prior to RIV, correct?
And yeah, even before that. So yeah.
Yeah.
And so Kevin's saying, does that change in use, if Alice sells the building in 2 years, that change of use would carry over to the next potential buyer?
No, well, the non-conforming use would not, that would, there'd have to be a special exception to, continue the non-conforming use. And then for the rest of the, property, the residential units, it would depend on the, what's on the certificate of occupancy, the occupancy permit. And if a new owner comes in and wants to do another use that doesn't match it, that doesn't match what's on the occupancy permit, then they're going to have to apply for whatever use they want to do. And if that use is not permitted in the RIV zone, then they would have to get a use variance.
Clear as mud.
What's that, Mike?
Yeah, I mean the RIV is tricky. I mean, you said that you haven't dealt with it much. I definitely haven't either. So
yeah, I think in general what the person's asking is what if, and we can't answer the what if necessarily, who comes after and how it's going to be utilized, and that would be through the sale of the change of use. That would spawn a development activity meeting, which would involve the neighborhood and our input again. So that's the backstop on the what if, I feel.
And I think we experienced this when we were looking at the convent on South 15th Street. And I think that zoning board said we can't look at what it could be in the future, and
that's right,
actually put something in the zoning or the occupancy piece today.
Well, that was a little different because that was a special use. We were asking for a reversionary language to the zoning code, which is not quite the same here. They're actually doing a of right zoning use proposed and eliminating a non-conforming. So it's a little bit almost opposite to that, but I don't have the same concern, but it's similar. So yeah.
Okay. So we have a couple other open items in the chat, and then we'll get to everyone with their hands raised. Will the residents be allowed to have guests, and will they be allowed to stay for any length of time? And I believe the same person asked, where will the proposed parking spaces be located? The number that you're required to have.
Okay, as far as overnight guests, if it's on the weekend or something, yes, they can have overnight guests. No, they cannot have anyone else move in with them. They will be put out of the program for that. It's only for them and their children. And there's no extended summer guest either.
So we dealt with that once before on another project. I forget which one, where they talked about, well, how do you define what a common law or a burgeoning relationship? How do you define that so that we don't, you know what I mean? And it doesn't become every unit has 3 or 4 people in it then.
If you're not on the lease, you don't live there.
Okay. All right.
And can I just, I don't know if it will deal with the parking question, but I guess, Alicia, when you were saying that when a business was occupying the building, they probably needed more parking spaces. And I don't have an answer for that. The only thing that I will say is when permit parking went into effect in that area, there was concern by Lunametrics, who a business that was, I don't know if they were on the first floor and second floor or just the first floor, but they had a considerable number of employees, and there were problems because they now could not park in the permit parking area and were getting tickets. And Brian, who owned the company, often shared with us the stack of tickets. In addition, they were parking down at the riverfront park, and at times cars were being broken into. And as a result of them, we worked with Pittsburgh Parking Authority, and we changed the parking requirements for the numbered streets so that parking would not start, the RPP time would not start when people could get a ticket to 4:30. And so I don't think that's an answer for tonight, but it's if they had to have so many parking spaces, I never heard about that. And I was working closely with Brian and a committee to find parking spaces, because the chamber then began working with them, but the cost was too high for them to use the lot at the U.S. Steel building, the U.S. Steel building on Muriel. And as I said, that may be one of the reasons why Lunametrics decided to move to the High Line. But so I don't know whether that's relevant to this discussion, but I wanted to share it because I'm not sure they had parking spaces for their employees, and if they're required to have them.
Okay, well, thank you. Yeah, I know this is something that's not going to be resolved this evening, especially, with some of the underlying questions that we still have. And maybe it just is a simple phone call over to the parking authority, and maybe, understanding what Lunametric was working with before, and maybe that becomes our starting point. I know that, if we consider the reductions and then we maybe work with, we're only looking at maybe 10 total spaces if we do decide to do a bike sharing program, in the basement. So I know this is all very preliminary, and it's not something that we're going to dismiss by no means. And we do take this very seriously, because I do know that, parking is a premium down in the South Side.
And there is one attendee who said, asked if you know where the parking spaces will be. And am I correct that you're in the beginning stages of looking into that?
Correct, yes.
All right, let's go over to some of our guests on the phone. Peter, you've had your hand up for a while. Do you want to go ahead and ask your question?
Sure, just some quick ones. In fact, some have been asked and answered, so thank you. Primarily on this parking thing. I'm curious, on day one, your proposal is that when this is ready, the second and third floor would be occupied, and the first floor is what?
The first and second floor will be occupied with apartments. The third floor has the yellow submarine there.
Oh, well then I guess I misunderstood. Okay, so then for the first floor to be occupied, you're proposing opening up those bricked up window openings. Yes?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything existing in terms of any openings that were boarded up or bricked up, we will be maximizing all daylight.
The historic masonry openings. Okay, got it. And it's not on this slide. It's on some of the architectural slides. It's just a very minor point, but I got yelled at because I put it on some of our drawings earlier that, no, keep going. There you go. Yeah, I got yelled at once because south side is 2 words. So just one little edit request there, and that's all I have. Thanks.
Very
Thanks,
good.
Peter. All right, I'm going to go over to Quay Lin and then Mike McKay and then Faye. So go ahead, Quay Lin.
Hi, I just have a couple of questions about your organization and some of the funding that you're going to be getting. You're already a 501c3?
Yes, I am.
Okay. And then you said that there are some of the, you're getting funders, or is it through foundations, or how are you getting some of your funding to purchase this building?
It's private funding.
Private funding. Okay. Okay. Those were my primary questions, which were if you were a 501c3 and then how you were going to get your funding. Okay. That's what I needed to know. Thank you.
All right, Mike McKay.
Yeah, this is just a dumb question, but what does TSSP stand for?
It's the Stepping Stone Pathways.
Wait, say that again?
It's the for the Stepping Stone Pathways. It's just another way to.
Oh, the Stepping Stone Path. Oh, I get it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right, and Faye, you have your hand raised.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. This is my concern, because I live right next, 2 houses from this project. And I guess since you say there's going to be no security, first of all, how are you going to, if you get these young women, I guess they have to all be young women or women, single mothers, to be able to rent these places. And they get in there, and let's say first of all, do they have to show you their report cards to make sure that they keep their 2.5 GPA up?
Absolutely. It is a part of our program. We monitor them from day one.
All right. So then let's say they get a 2.0 and you say, well, you got to move. And they say, well, I don't want to. How are you going to get them out of there?
Well, first of all, before they even get to the 2.0, they have weekly meetings with our team. So each student is being followed by each team member. And when we see anything or there's a discussion, because they meet with their coaches, they meet with all of them. And when we see the grade starting to slip, we address as to why is the grade slipping. And we address that. And if it's a matter of, they're getting the tutoring, they're getting the extra help, and that subject is just not their subject to pass, we do have grace, as we all should. And as long as that student is trying, they're in school, they have their attendance up, and they're doing well in their other studies, and they show that they are making the effort, you can't fault someone for a subject it's not their subject. And
I get that. I get that. But let's say they're smart and they say, well, I don't really care. And I'm just going to stay here, and I'm going to get a lawyer, and you just try to get rid of me. You're going to try to get rid of a single woman with a baby? I think that's going to be real tough.
Well, that's a part of the program. And that's why we do the lengthy process of interviewing and following up on their referrals and looking at their history. Because it's by semester, and this will be something that they know housing wise. And what we are trying to do is to get it a month-to-month lease we're still working on that for that reason, because we want this housing program to be for students who are about their business of getting their education, not playing the system or others. If that's not what, your intents are, and throughout the, interview process and everything, it will show up. We know what to look for. I've been an educator for 25 years, kind of familiar, got a couple teenagers and some young adults. So, yes, we will be very stringent on our application process.
Like I said, you can, I've been a landlord, I've been an educator too. And kids can be real slick. They can tell you everything you want to hear.
And they have to produce. It's not just a conversation. You have to produce, and with their team is working with your school also. So
once they're in there, man, they're squatters. Try to get them out.
That's why I said we're looking to do the month to month, because we're definitely not looking for a person who says they want to be in school and they want to, do this here. That's not our student that we're looking for and that we accept. You have to be in school. You have to have some.
I think
show for it. It's not a conversation. You got to show and not just talk, and it will be evaluated at all levels. And it's a constant evaluation per semester. So it's not, oh, this year, I have to do this, but I don't have to do it next year. No, it's per semester. And then they have a review every 3 weeks. If there's a shift in like attendance, or if there's a shift in their grades. And sometimes life is happening to people. We've had students where a parent died and they had to take care of the other parent. So they couldn't make it to school and they just quit, when they didn't know better. So we were able to help them withdraw from school, instead of just later on wanting to go back and they messed up their financial aid. So, a lot of times life happens and not everybody knows how to handle it. That's where their life coach comes in at. And we help them and meet them where they are, not where we think they should be. And we will help them get to where they want to be.
Will you have somebody doing at-home visits, or is this just going to be over the phone?
No.
No at-home visits.
No, this is virtual, but we will have the opportunity to do monthly, what is it called? For insects, where we will have the place sanitized. We will have someone come with that, not sanitized, but for any bugs. I can't think of the name.
Pest control.
Yeah, just pest control.
Yes.
How are you going to virtually know if there's no boyfriends or?
There will be cameras. There will be lots of cameras throughout the building and floor. And again, this is something that if your name is not on the lease and you end up disregarding our rules, that will be a part of your eviction process.
Right. Do you have any more questions for Alice?
I do have one more. What college will they be going to?
We don't discriminate on where they could be a trade student. And we do work with dads. We've worked with several dads thus far.
I'm sorry, you do deal with what?
We do work with dads. There are single dads as well.
Okay, so there can be men there too.
Yes, we have 2 widows.
Okay. All right, that's all. Thank you.
Okay. Can we unmute Kevin Morrison? He has a question, and then I think Thomas Ryan also still has an unanswered question. We can start with Kevin though.
Hello.
Hi.
I'll try and be as quick as possible. First of all, just to identify myself, I live directly across the street at 23 South 18th Street. So I look at the building every morning when I'm having my breakfast. The guys who work there on the third floor park in the street. I don't think there's any parking that the building has at all. Parking is the least of my concerns tonight. This is a laudable, I used that word earlier in the question, but extremely ambitious project. And I'd feel a hell of a lot more comfortable if the 501c3 was not new, actually had some kind of experience in this field. So if it was Family Resources, which is an old Pittsburgh family nonprofit, I'd be very receptive. But this to me is raises far more questions than it answers in terms of who is going to go in there, how is it going to be funded? Where is the $1 million coming from? It's a private thing. How is that? It just raises all kinds of alerts for me. And I wish it didn't, because I'm, as I said, very supportive of the overall object of this. But I do go back to the question I asked earlier, which is, if this all falls apart, can somebody just simply come in and put 9 rental units on the market? Because the change of use has been granted and they're not changing anything. They're putting 9 people into 9 apartments, which is what happened before it went bad. If that's the case, it changes the nature of the neighborhood. This is a neighborhood in which this particular building is surrounded by condominium or planned community developments, all of which have rules and regulations about how people in there behave, minimum times that people can act as leaseholders, and so on. And suddenly we've got what Alicia called transients in this building. And I wonder whether or not we would be having these discussions if this was a commercial application, because there should be no difference in this examination process from a commercial applicant and a well-meaning nonprofit applicant. I realize that what I'm saying is to some people embarrassing, but I think it needs to be said. And I'm very grateful for the opportunity. Thank you.
Well, I will speak to the 501c3 timeframe. Sometimes when you have the experience of living a situation, it brings on a different approach as to how you handle your business when it's a bit more personal. And what I mean by that is, if I did not have the opportunity to live in the Dorothy Day apartment, I may not be where I am at this time in my life. And as far as my funding is concerned, I think having a private lender is just as well meets the need to handle the process to where we can purchase as any other.
So they're a nonprofit.
Kevin, did that take care of your questions that you had for Alice and team?
Well, it's not relevant particularly, but I ran a nonprofit for 15 years. I know how it works. I know the Pittsburgh nonprofits in this field. I think it's unfortunate that we've got TSSP and the Housing Phase 1 LLC, which is private, and we've got no evidence of where the funding is coming from for the purchase of the property. There's no track record of doing. I mean, Alice has been speaking about at length about grades that people get, and about doing a lengthy process of interviewing. Well, she hasn't been doing that because she's not had anybody in this situation. This is a startup. And talking about having cameras in the building to check on the way it's being run doesn't give me confidence. I just think that this needs good nonprofit management, and we're being told it's almost hands-off, that there isn't going to be anybody on site. It just doesn't smell right to me.
Okay. I don't know, Alice, if you have any comment to that. If not, we'll move on to the next questions in the chat.
No, I don't.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can we have, let's see, anonymous attendee, JEH25 unmuted?
And that's Jim Heber.
Yep.
Hey there, this is Ed Wallow. I'm on Jim's computer. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I just have a couple of questions. And just for some background, I'm the president of the HOA that basically will be the neighboring north and west neighbor on this building. And I do have some comments on that, but I do have a very specific question to Alice. Forgive me for this because I was looking at this as I was in the car this afternoon, but is your board of directors listed on your website?
No, they are not.
Are you willing to tell us who that board of directors is?
I will share that once we acquire the property.
Once you have private property?
No, close the property.
Once you close the property?
Mm-hmm.
All right. And from the standpoint of the property itself, I just want your people to be aware of the fact, your construction people and your planning people, that it is the 0 lot line that Mike referenced. And so that basically when you access the outside of the building, from that standpoint, you would have to get our approval to come through the property. And not only is it common property, but it's limited common area. So you would have to get the specific approval of those neighbors who have control of that limited common area. So I'm just telling you that now. This, it may or may not be in the future, but that's the way we have handled things in the past when there has got to be some sort of maintenance on that building. And also from the standpoint of your management company, sounds like you have not yet firmed up that deal. I would probably urge you I know Kevin, he is across the street and he and I speak. So we often speak about management companies, to be honest with you. And given what you're doing, I would probably urge you to have an on-site manager. At least initially, I think that would provide a lot of comfort to people from a standpoint of communication and getting things done. So once again, if you could just catalog that. And also from the KK, whatever the parking might be, let's face it, it will be on Merriman Street. Merriman Street had previously been a KK permit area. The city opted unilaterally, and most probably illegally, took that away. So right now, that is the area where whatever cars you're being talked about would have to be parked on. And that's basically my comments for this evening. And just so that you're aware, this is a very hot topic here. There will probably be a lot of feedback from neighbors after this evening's meeting as well.
Thanks, Ed. Anything else?
That is it. Thank you.
All right, good
I
to hear
await
you.
answers, though.
Are there any answers to any of those comments or questions from the team?
No.
I can talk on, I mean, like I as previously mentioned, the aspect of the parking, we are in our very early preliminary stages, and I appreciate you bringing up the feedback, especially for somebody who, you know, is very active in that area. And like I said before, this is something that we will take, we are looking into. We already have our preliminary numbers in terms of the demand. And it's something that we will thoroughly investigate. And, you know, I don't think I can emphasize this enough. And if we have to go for a variance, we will go for a variance, but we're going to definitely get our ducks in a row in terms of looking at the total amount required and what is available to us. And, you know, if that in turn revolves working with the parking authority, you know, and looking at what was done previously, you know, we'd be more than happy to do that. This is not something that will be swept under the rug. I can assure that.
Okay, thanks, Alicia. We had Thomas Ryan also had a question in his hand raised for quite some time. Can we hit him next and then Jacqueline after that? Thomas, are you
Hello,
on?
hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, thank you for holding this meeting tonight. I find it very interesting thus far. I'm not a Zoom user, so bear with me. I'll try and use it as effectively as I can. To give you some background, I live at 1734 South Shore Court, and I look out over the building every morning, as does my wife and my stepson. So we're very much interested in the use of that building as it impacts our lives every day. My background is I'm a certified public accountant and have been so for decades. I've done hundreds of audits of nonprofit organizations. I was considered an expert in the financial affairs of auditing and financial reporting for nonprofit organizations. I've prepared hundreds, maybe thousands of Form 990s, which are the annual returns that nonprofits must file every year. It's important to understand that a 501c3 is an entity that has been granted special provisions and exemptions from federal taxation. In exchange for that privilege, it has an obligation to report its financial information to the public every year, and it should be available, the 990 should be made available to the public upon request. So at this point, I would like to request the financial statements of the 990s of the 501c3 since inception, since it's only been around 4 years. I ask that information, first of all, because it's public information that must be provided. Secondly, because I share the concern of one of the earlier speakers, who is also familiar with nonprofit organizations, who expressed some concerns about the nature of the activity and the length of management involved with dealing with these issues on an ongoing basis. What typically would happen, and this is almost a confluence of events between nonprofits and for-profits, and that's what I'm not quite understanding, is in the for-profit community and also for nonprofits, when you're first starting up a project like this, you would have a set of what's called pro forma financials prepared that show the money's coming in, the money's going out, and also the financial wherewithal for the organization to financially sustain itself in the project. When you're involved with real estate, that is a long-term investment. Many nonprofits avoid that because of the nature of the long-term funding that's required to sustain it. So I would be interested in seeing, and since it's a 501c3, the public can ask for that information because we're supporting it as from tax exempt status purposes. I would like to see what the pro forma looks like. Also, with regard to who are the officers, well, first of all, the board members, that information after the property is acquired, that answer does not ring true to me because it is public information that should be made available to the public upon request. In addition to that, I would like to know who are the officers. I would like to know who's the treasurer. I'd like to know who's the president. And I'd like to know who the vice president and the secretary would be. Or are. The organization exists, they must exist. I would like to know if there is a funding contract. Typically, nonprofit organizations will enter into agreements with counties, with states, or with the federal government in exchange, and that relationship is expressed in the form of a contract. Typically, those contracts consist of a one-year period. And they state, for instance, in this case, the number of units that would be there, how much the federal government or state government or local government would provide. If there's anticipated private contributions, that would be in the budget. Those would be the things that I would like to see that I have seen. I don't know if it's 100 times, but many, many times. And with regard to the purchase of the property, I find that an unusual transaction because if it's privately funded, then what is the nature of the collateral? And if the project is funded by somebody privately, if the organization is unable to sustain itself, then that property would be converted over to the person who's privately funding this. And that's why I say it's confusing to me because the terms don't seem consistent with what good best business practices are in this area. So I could go on about the other expenses, for instance, who pays for the coaches, where's that money come from, the office expenses, the overhead and so on, but why belabor that? I think you can get my point. Secondly, I would say with regard to the consumers, I would say if we're going with a month-to-month lease, I also agree with the lady, I believe it was, who said that getting out a tenant could be a problem. It's just practical. It's a practical question. The security protocols, I think, would need to be make me aware of what they are. I'm not an expert in that area, but at least I have enough sense that I could look at it and say, does that make sense? With what I call the stayovers, that would be a concern. And also, does management of this proposed, or actually the nonprofit, but proposed project, understand that this is a crime area? There are people down in within blocks of this place that crimes are committed all the time down there. And I talked to my wife about this because we have single moms in our family. We have single moms who supported their children that have gone to college and done that as well. So we are very sympathetic to the program that's proposed. However, a program that is unsustainable is not sound and would not be one that I could honestly recommend to anybody such as ourselves to go ahead and support in whatever way that somebody thinks that we should. But that's not my call. But it is an area where if we have young mothers and children down there, we need to be aware of what's going on down there, as we all know. Cars drive through kitchens. We have shootings on corners down there. And then my car's been broken into twice this past week. I mean, it's not a panacea of perfectness down there. And some people might say, well, that's living in the city. Well, that's true. That's living in the city. So those are the comments that I make, but I must stress that it is highly unusual that if somebody is not submitting their 501c3 990s to us and or the financial sustainability of this project, that for us, and I'm not exactly sure how we enter into this and what our authority or lack of authority is, but without understanding the financial implications of this, I think it would be unwise for a group to go ahead and provide some kind of approval on a project like this without knowing, or a year or two from now, are we just going to be revisiting this with somebody else? So I will close with that. And Alice, again, I want to compliment you on the nobleness of your project. I have great deal of sympathy for what you hoped the project would accomplish. However, I have been in a number of projects that have been unsuccessful, and when and if they are, it is an unpleasant experience to unwind them. So with that, I will turn the thing back to the audience here for response.
Well, thank you for sharing your concerns. I do understand that. And I will say that once we close on the property, at our next meeting, we will be able to meet you at your needs as far as our financials are concerned for the nonprofit and for the for-profit.
Alice, this is Quaylin. Just to when you just mentioned this, your donor that's going to be a donor or donors, are those going to be a donation to your organization, or will they also have part ownership in the building?
No, they will have no ownership in the building whatsoever.
Okay, so this is a donation to a nonprofit, right?
The nonprofit is the service that the students will receive. The nonprofit will not be inside of the building. There are two separate entities, and I think there's a blur here. The services that the students will receive do not reside in the building. They
okay,
are two
but who
separate
owns
entities.
the building? Who is going to?
TSSP Housing will own the building.
Is TSSB Housing a nonprofit organization?
No, it is not. The housing is a for-profit entity.
So in other words, it's sort of like what's happening is the housing, which is a for-profit, is going
No,
to
the housing is not a the housing is a for-profit. The services are a nonprofit.
I understand. I'm going back to the building, the housing, okay? So the housing is going to own the building, correct?
Yes.
Okay, but the donor is going to be giving a donation to the program, or is the donor, pardon me?
No, the donor has nothing to do with the program. The housing is separate. The financing for the housing is separate from the financing from the nonprofit.
Okay, so let's go back to the housing, TSS. Okay, so this donor is going to give these, whomever, the donors are going to give money to TSSP. If I have your acronyms wrong, I apologize. So they're going to give the money to the housing entity so they can buy the building, correct?
The housing, yes, the housing has a private lender.
Okay, so the housing has a private lender. All right, so that's not, he's not, this person or persons are not donors, they are lenders.
Correct.
Okay, so that if, God forbid, somehow or other, it ends up being, you end up defaulting on that loan, will they be able to take the building over?
That I cannot answer for you at this moment clearly.
Well, that's part of some of the questions that have been asked, because, and that's why I was trying to ask a few more, because the questions that have been asked is, for example, if you were by some chance, or the housing, TSSP housing, was to default on their loan from the lender, okay, then what they can do is foreclose on the building. They can own it. They can either run something else out of it or sell it. And I think that's the piece that many of the questions you've had here tonight are trying to be clear about. So because we've been in that situation where something like that has happened. And that's why we're just asking those kinds of questions. Who's on your board or who the lender is. And I understand you don't want to reveal those, but that's the reason for the questions is because your program is a wonderful program. Absolutely. It's fabulous. And it's run by the nonprofit. But basically the nonprofit is a tenant of TSSP. And if TSSP is not able to keep the funds going to the lender, then you may all be evicted. Are you understanding some of our concerns and some of the things that we're asking? We think the program's wonderful, but it has to do with ownership of the building.
Absolutely. I understand that. And I do understand tomorrow's not promised to nobody. So I will not speak to the future of the program failing and the project going under. I can't promise what tomorrow brings.
Okay. And I think you've answered. I think you've answered all of our questions. And I think that Jackie, would you say that sort of helps make it clearer? And whoever was also talking a little bit beforehand.
I would just like to add, so the challenge here is I'm unclear who the building owner actually is, because it is uncommon for us to have this meeting with the tenant. We usually have the owner representing their interest in the change of use, and then the tenant coming along to explain the use. So I don't feel like I've been talking with an owner. Who is the board, or who is the president, who is the owner of TSSP Housing?
I am she. And Christopher Washington is the co-partner of TSSP Housing. So you have been talking to the owner.
Okay.
Once the building is purchased and there's the closing. That's why I'm a bit vague with the answer, because we did not have our closing yet.
Right.
So because we didn't have the closing yet, there are certain things that we can't share at this point because we don't own the building.
We understand, Alice. Most of the time developments do come to us for prior approval before the closing happens, just for that purpose. But we're trying to understand the separation here that you've just explained here in the last few minutes. I feel like that's when I've got it. But okay, so you're the controlling officer of the TSSP Housing then? Is that the best way to describe your role in that?
Yes, you could say that.
Okay. So you would determine its future, whatever. I think I understand myself. So I'm going to pass it back to Jackie.
I think we're good.
Okay. We have Jacqueline, if you want to come off mute, you had a number of questions in the chat, and I know you had your hand raised, and then we can go to Mark after Jacqueline.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Thank you. So just for some context, I'm a property owner within a few blocks of the building in question. And I do also want to echo the positive nature of this proposal. I myself was raised by a single mother who actually greatly benefited from the CCAC classes that she took to improve our opportunities for my family. And I actually still benefit from what she taught me back in the day when she was taking those classes. So to create an environment where a single mother could flourish with her education, or a father, also good, and potentially pass that on to her children is definitely right up my alley. But I did want to echo some of the other comments as well. So since very little information is available about the organization that is going to be running these apartments, I was wondering if the speaker could discuss, for example, how many students are currently in the program, how many students have graduated the program over the last 4 years, what is the graduation rate, and what is the acceptance rate for the program, specifically the number that are admitted into the program over the number of applicants. That was my first set of questions, so I can pause there.
Okay, the graduation rate thus far has been at 95%. These students we work with virtually. And as far as our total number of students that we have worked with is 63. Our total in regards to that get rejected, that number is pretty high, I'm sorry to say. It's about a good 40 to 45%.
Thank you very much for sharing that.
Sure.
There was also a comment earlier by Alice that said something about 10% of net income. And then later on in the conversation, it's been raised kind of what is the funding for the situation. And you elaborated to say that TSSP Housing is a for-profit that is actually purchasing the building, where the nonprofit, which I believe is just called TSSP, is actually going to be running the services. So I was a little bit confused on this because you also mentioned that the organization has no paid employees, but provided a long list of services and an extensive workload, including coaching, mentoring, and tutoring, and none of which would occur on site. I understand that, but how are these services being provided if the organization has no paid employees?
We have partnerships that we work with.
So there's another nonprofit organization or for-profit organization that you work with?
We work with both. The nonprofit entity has its own group of partners that assist the student. In order to be in the program for the nonprofit to get our services, the students are required to pay 10% of their net income. And we have great reason to do so, because when there is no skin in the game, so to speak, we were dealing with a lot more students that I'm really not counting where we were working with high school students that only wanted the benefits of the program, but did not want to do the requirement to remain in the program. So with that, that helped us to focus on students who wanted to make sure that they finish school and get the benefits that comes along with the programming, not just what can I get from the program and not finish school. So that's completely separate.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense, and I can certainly understand the skin in the game as I myself have 20 years experience in education for the exact age group that you're speaking of. So that makes sense that you're saying essentially 10% of their net income goes to like the life coach and the mentoring section, but that does raise a question I'm a little bit confused on. Then are the occupants of these 9 units in the proposed property, are they paying in any way for the use of these apartments? And if they are not paying, who is ultimately paying the for-profit TSSP housing for the use of this set of apartments?
Okay, the services is the 10%. Okay. Regardless if you are in our housing program or not, you pay the 10% for our services. Okay.
Yes, I understand that.
Okay. And your question is for housing, will they live there for free? Absolutely not. They will pay 30% of the estimated cost per their unit. And the building, not the tenant, will have project-based vouchers to pay the rent for the unit. But again, the student has to pass the qualifications through HUD and our qualifications to be in the program and our qualifications to be in the housing.
So I'm not very familiar with that terminology. What is a project-based voucher? Is that something that would be happening inside of this property?
No, it's from the city. And what it does is it takes care of the financing for the apartment. So it stays with the building, not the tenant. So if a tenant comes, they may pay X amount of rent here, but when they leave, they would pay whatever the landlord or their mortgage would be. But the property would be covered financially through the project-based voucher.
So can you provide an example of a project-based voucher? I really have no idea what that means.
Okay.
I can try to look it up later.
Okay. A project-based voucher will cover 70% of the amount of the apartment. The student will pay 30% of the amount of rent for that apartment.
Is that considered government subsidized housing then?
Yes, it could be considered that, yes.
So what does one do to qualify for this project-based voucher?
That's what the property owner would have to do, which is myself. The tenants don't have nothing to do with that.
Okay, what do you have to do then?
Oh, I have a major report and presentation that gets approved, and now I'm working with a team to make sure that we get the leasing process to where only our students would be living there from the nonprofit. And we're trying to see if it's any way possible to have short-term leases, because what we don't want to have, like which was spoken about before, is someone to get in the program and then they drop out once they move in, and they're there for a long period of time. So that's what we're trying to work on to prevent at this time.
So just to confirm, at this time, you have not solidified that that TSSP housing has not solidified an agreement or a contract where only students that are enrolled in the TSSP program would be using these 9 apartments. That is not currently solidified.
There is a MOU between TSSP housing and the Stepping Stone Pathways to handle that portion that you're speaking of.
Okay. And you were saying that you're preparing a presentation. In this presentation, you're going to be trying to get the project-based voucher to cover 70% of the rent, and the tenant would cover the remaining 30%. What is the number that you're using that would be the rent for such a property? So you can then calculate 30% and 70% of that number.
It depends on which unit, because it could range between 12 and 1,500, depending on the size, because they're not all the same size.
Sure.
So it's a give or take.
And is that based on current market rates?
Yes,
in
it is.
the direct 10 block vicinity?
Yes, it is.
I would very much appreciate seeing the data to support that at a future meeting.
Absolutely.
The last thing that I wanted to say earlier, I think his name is Mike Clark, had asked about future plans for the basement. I, as I said, proximal property owner, would want to know what the future plans for the basement are before this section of the building would be approved for a use variance. I think it's important to know what the entire project looks like. And on the announcement for tonight's meeting, the basement was included as a note. So I was surprised to see that it was mentioned as not being discussed tonight. And lastly, I also want to go on record to say that the demand for parking in a commercial property, which is what that is currently used for, is very different than a residential property. So I see the workers, even kind of pre-COVID, I would see the workers for the first, second, and third floor of that property. They would generally arrive between 9 and 10 in the morning and depart by 5 p.m. So there's about 40 hours a week, someone needed a parking space in order to occupy that building. When you convert it to residential building, that is potentially 24/7 parking on demand. So your calculations about that this many parking spaces and now we are grandfathered in and all that, to me, that's irrelevant, because that was a commercial use. They were using the parking during business hours. And in the South Side, anyone who lives down here knows you're fine during business hours. Monday through Friday, you can generally park where you need to. But come Friday, 5 o'clock until Sunday about 5 o'clock, that's a very different situation to find a parking space. So I would really caution you in thinking about where these individuals are going to park, because I do not view parking on Merriman Street as a solution. Thank you very much for your responses.
To touch on to your parking, I actually did answer that in the chat, but
I saw it, but I don't agree with your statements.
Oh, I understand, and I understand that, you know, based off of, you know, what you're looking at the typical everyday, you know, timely demand. And the same could be said as, you know, off business hours, as well as like South Side and bars and everything like that. It's a very big concern down the South Side, not just in the riverfront area, but also just South Side in general. So I definitely understand your point, and it's something we will take into consideration. And at this point, all we've taken at a look at in depth is the demand based off of what the zoning code has provided. And again, we'll look into parking authority and seeing what was done previously as the business that you mentioned, and we can kind of work backwards from there. But this isn't something that we take very lightly at all.
Okay. Mark, are you still on the line? Mark Zhang? Don't see him in the attendee list anymore. Oh, yep, there you are. Go ahead, Mark. Mark, are you, I think you're unmuted.
Would it be helpful just to read Mark's questions and provide
Sure.
answers to those?
Okay, he's having some audio issues, so he has two questions. What is the building currently being used for? And question number two, TSSP housing is registered at the same address as the Garden City United Methodist Church in Monroeville. Is there a relationship with that church? And his third question was about the daycare. And yes, our announcement went out with the daycare listed, and then we found out closer to the meeting date from Alice and her team that the daycare was no longer considered under their phase one part of this project. So that's the info on the daycare. But going back to his first two questions, what is the building currently being used for, and any connection to the United Methodist Church in Monroeville?
I can answer the question to the United Methodist Church. It is a huge church and it has a level of offices within it, and it rents to nonprofits. So that would be my connection to the church as our space. And as far as the building use, only the third floor is occupied by the Yellow Submarine. The rest of the building is vacant.
Okay. Thanks, Alice. All right. Jacqueline, did you raise your hand again, or is that your hand raised from before?
Sorry, I will lower it now.
Okay, great. All right, it looks like we have everything answered in the chat. Does anyone else on the call have any other questions for Alice and her team tonight?
I guess the only thing that we talked about is we won't know a lot of these things. They're not willing to disclose them until the closing. Is the closing contingent on the zoning, or is it happening in the near future prior to the zoning hearing?
I hope sooner than later. That is our goal within the next week or so, that we'll be closing. So I guess by that time of the next meeting, we will have a definite answer as to what that process is.
So if I don't know what hearing, maybe Philip knows what the date of the hearing is right now.
Well, we don't even know if or when there will be a hearing, because as far as we know, there has not been a zoning application submitted yet.
Okay, so we might be able to have an update at our next dam after the sale is complete, prior to the zoning hearing.
Yes.
A little more information.
You will have a lot more information.
I
will make sure that we will meet your every request and give you guys a level of comfort to where you will see it as a benefit and a project that will help enhance the community and other people's lives and generations to come.
look forward to hearing it.
Okay. Anybody else have any other comments or questions? Thanks, Mike, for asking that.
Yep.
Took my wind right out of my sails, but I thank you there for that.
Sorry about that. I didn't know if that's where we were going. That's what happened.
No, it's fine. All right. It sounds like we're good to go.
Jackie, there is one more question in the Q&A.
Okay.
If there's not daycare when the students are in school, what are you going to do with the kids?
I'm sorry, what are we going to do with the kids if they're not in school? Is that the question?
No, when the parents are in school, where do the kids go during the day if there's no on-site daycare?
They will have to be in a daycare center. Parents can't leave kids at home. So right now we can't really speak to the daycare in the building. So if that's kind of the gist of the question, I'm sorry, I can't answer that right now.
Okay. And Mike McKay asks,
yeah,
sorry,
there's also, sorry, you stole my thunder there.
It's late. We're all getting a little punch drunk here. Mike McKay asked of Alice, are these going to be furnished apartments or do the students furnish them?
The students will furnish their own apartment.
Great. All right. Does anyone else have any other questions or anything else that they want to bring up this evening? No? I don't think this is our longest dam, but it was, it's
Damn
up
close.
there.
Damn close.
So Alice, I want to thank you and your team for presenting and for hanging on the phone tonight and answering all of our questions. Thank you, everyone else who joined the conversation tonight. It sounds like we'll be hearing from Alice and her team again, whether that's next month. We'll wait to see, but we will be in contact, we being the Southside Community Council, with Alice and her team, as well as the other DAM presenters from this evening. Let's see, do we have any next steps we have to share? All right. So please visit the Southside Community Council website for follow-up on the projects discussed during the dam. We will post tonight's meeting on our YouTube page as soon as possible for review. Feel free to pass that along to anyone else in the community that you think would be interested. While you're on our website, also sign up for our monthly newsletter from the Southside Community Council that includes all the ongoings in the Southside Flats on a monthly basis. And our next dam is scheduled for Thursday, August 18th. So thanks everyone for joining. Have a great rest of your evening and a lovely weekend. Talk to you soon.
Jackie.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.